Hello and welcome to Onesies, the podcast of one season wonders and blunders. My name's Andrew.
My name is Emily.
And this season we are talking about Automan, the 1983. You'd think I'd remember at this point. CBS? ABC?
ABC?
NBC? Not Fox.
Question mark? ABC.
ABC nighttime drama for children, Automan. This episode, we're talking about episode 5, Unreasonable Facsimiles. We're not going to get political before the show, but I do want to say today is a great day to shit in a bucket and wipe it all over any conservative family members you have. Go over to their house and plug up their toilet with shit and might drop out. Okay. On to the show. There were like 45 things to talk about this episode, but what are your 3? I
couldn't even pick 3. So I'm going to go pickup lines because they're sprinkled throughout. It's a beautiful thing. I have beat him up, kick his ass. Oh, yeah. Okay. We won't talk about that though. God, all I can do is talk about fucking pickup lines. And the Jeep copter chase at the beginning.
Okay.
So I've got 2. I'm sorry.
You've got 2. So I will go with Eurythmics cover, which was very impressive. That's a pickup line. Wally's tasty nuts.
Ew.
Wally's terrific nuts, actually. And Southern Gentleman.
Okay.
But also, fuck that. Sorry. Fuck them. Sorry. Leave that part in.
Okay.
You won't know what got cut out, folks, but there will probably be stuff that doesn't make it.
It's going to be a lot of editing this weekend for me.
Somebody edits. Okay. So, yes, we open with a Jeep helicopter chase.
Yeah.
And my first thought was, is this even original to Automan?
Yeah, I'm not sure, but I read something about this that apparently it was very short. The actual shooting of this scene was very short. So they had to keep editing it, keep cutting back. So they were reusing a lot of the same footage because they just didn't get a lot of footage for it. They just didn't have the money for it, I guess. But that being said, I think it's the best chase we've seen.
Oh, by far. I mean, I thought it was from a different show.
Yeah.
So clearly.
Yeah. It's the best chase scene we've seen. I have Jeep copter chase plus a little thumbs up that I drew. See my little thumb? A little thumbs up that I drew.
Yes, yeah. There is a very bad other chase scene in the episode.
Oh, yeah.
Actually. So
There's a couple. Kind of There's a couple, right? Yeah.
The one at the end's regular and competent. The one with Wally's just fucking backlot. They should have done the silly music from before.
Yeah.
From last episode. But yes, so the chase scene ends in a crash of the helicopter, and then we get trying to find the name of the guest star.
I don't know what his actor name is.
Is that Innes? Was that him?
Yeah.
Okay, so he was the first build. Okay, so that's Robert Sampson. He's an aerospace engineer who watches this on the news and gets very upset, and he goes in to talk to his buddy Glenn Corbett about this, and he's like, we bought shitty parts and sold them, and now we're causing accidents. This is bad. And the other guy says, you can't do that because we just sold the company and you can't red flag this deal.
Yeah.
So cut back to Mr. Ennis's office where he is packaging something in the mail. And he asks his assistant to send it. But then his boss calls the bad guy, whose name is Ed Scanlon. He is played by Gerald Gordon, who looks vaguely familiar. This episode's special guest stars are universally bad, which is interesting. Like,
except the one, the
white male guest stars.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. Yeah.
Like the business partner seems like I think what it is these guys all were like extras on Gunsmoke or something, so they never had to do anything but stand around a bar and take a punch and take a stage punch. And then once they got to the 80s, they had to do these kinds of parts, and they're quite bad. So but then we cut to Wally's apartment.
Again, you were just saying last episode, you were saying we don't get to see Wally's apartment anymore.
We get to see Wally's living room for the first time, I believe. And we don't get to see his basement lab. His computer's in the other room. But we cut to his living room. There's even an establishing shot of his apartment.
Yeah.
Now, at this point in the episode, because you had already watched it, and we had talked about Delta Burke being on it, I was like, am I watching the right episode? So I double checked. Oh, I was watching the right episode. And it will come in here. Now, there's a special guest star this episode, David Shiner as Norm. Or as Norman.
Okay.
He is Wally's video game industry contact.
Yeah.
So it seems as though Norman runs a video game company and he hires Wally to program for him. So Wally subcontracts for Norman. And Norman is talking to him about a game for a little TV show called Abilene.
I
don't fucking care how Texas pronounces anything.
Okay.
All the way to hell is how they can pronounce it. Okay. But it's basically a Dallas stand-in. We'll find out later.
Yeah.
They established a soap opera, and Wally's like, how the hell am I going to make a game of a soap opera?
I was asking myself the same question.
This is not I don't know of any examples off the top of my head, but given the video game industry of the early 1980s, this seems very believable. Like, it would not surprise me if there was a text and sometimes graphic based game of Dallas. I had a Perry Mason game.
Huh.
Like, this was a thing because like there were licenses and like, the licenses would have been cheap and it would have been worth it. But the thing, so Wally's apartment has some interesting design things. There are like bookshelves and plants in front of the posters. So like, it's clear that, his mom decorated it for him, including putting big bowls of nuts on his coffee table. And before I could message you...
Are you cooling yourself over Wally's nuts?
They're terrific nuts. Wally's got some terrific nuts. But yes, I am. It's actually very hot in the recording studio here today.
Gotcha.
But just as I was going to message you, do you have big bowls of nuts out in your apartment? The guy grabs a handful of the nuts, Norman, and says, I'm going to take these terrific walnuts with me to go. And it's just very weird.
Yeah. It's unnecessary. I wonder if it was an actor's choice.
Just like, you have these nuts. I got to comment on them. Like,
yeah. It's not Chekhov's nuts. They're not going to come back and play into this at all.
No, not at all, sadly. Though the apartment will, interestingly. So the guy leaves Wally a bunch of tapes of the show to watch.
Yeah. To try to figure out a video game for an evening soap opera.
Yes. Which would actually be pretty easy when you think about it. Like, yes and no stuff.
I mean, like now I think I could see that. Some like role-playing video game.
Well, they have those.
But I can't see 1983. Of course, I was a mere child, but
you'd have like really shitty static graphics every couple things, and it'd be mostly text-based.
Oh, ugh.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Very exciting stuff. So then Automan arrives. And Otto's first comment is, you seem surprised. And Wally's like, I wasn't expecting you. And Automan's like, dude, you programmed me to show up right now. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
And Wally's just like, oh. But instead of being a dick about it, he's just like, oh.
Yeah.
I'm busy. I forgot. Not like, you're so perfect, Automan.
You show up anytime I call you. No, Wally is better behaved this episode.
Nobody's outside of the captain calling him nebbish once. Everybody's kind of nice to each other this episode.
Yeah,
it's very strange.
It's very interesting.
But Otto is there to watch criminology interview tapes, presumably so he can racially profile suspects, actually. But then Wally gets called away by the captain. So, wait a second.
Yeah.
We're about to find a very interesting plot hole here. So Wally gets called into work, and it's up to Otto to watch the tapes himself. He picks the wrong thing. He picks the soap opera tapes to watch.
Yeah.
Dun, dun, dun. It's going to be funny. But then we cut to a club.
Oh, my God. Okay. Yeah.
Where Owner of a Lonely Heart, the cover, is playing in the background. And Ennis is meeting with Scanlon, who he thinks is just a normal guy who's buying his company, but then Scanlon's going to kill him for holding up the deal. There's a certain amount of 80s weirdness with these old fucking white dudes at this nightclub.
Yeah.
Especially establishing that they're regulars.
Establishing that they're regulars, and then the fact that we later find out it's a singles club. Yep.
It's very weird. It's weird while it plays, and you're just like, this is just creepy. Like,
and I'm going to go back because I have a question about their relationship. I was under the impression that Scanlon and Ennis were working together. It was their company, and they were selling it to other people.
So I believe, and Scanlon's basically a broker.
Oh, okay.
Ennis and Jarrett sold to Scanlon, only Jarrett and Scanlon were doing shady things on the side intentionally that Ennis thought they were doing unintentionally.
Okay.
That are worth killing him over. So they kill Ennis. Scanlon calls Jarrett at his kind of like ritzy Brady house. Like it's decorated like if the Bradys had a little bit more money.
Yeah.
And they're like, hey, man, I killed him, but where's this disc that has all the information on it? And they're like, oh, no, I don't know. What are we going to do? But we saw him mailing the disc.
Yes.
So, cut to the police station. Ennis has been murdered. It's time to put Lieutenant Jack Curtis on the case. The commissioner wants LA's top cop, Lieutenant Jack, the kidnappee.
He doesn't get kidnapped in this one.
He doesn't get kidnapped. B, Wally's called in for this. Ennis isn't dead when Wally gets called in for this.
That's true.
Yeah.
Maybe they were just investigating the helicopter crash.
But they don't.
They don't. Oh my God.
Yeah. And they already have like information about Ennis's date book and shit. So he's killed in an alley. I made a comment about the captain's hair. It looks even more like usual that O'Loughlin was down at the bar and they drug him out, and they couldn't get his hair on. But they're like, get on it, Nebbish. So we're doing the Nebbish thing.
Still.
So Wally sees a note that says CD 2000 in Ennis's date book, and he can't figure out what it is.
Oh, right.
Me being from the future, I was like, is that a CD-ROM? But no, because I live in the future, and this is before CD-ROMs existed. They introduced that there's a daughter that might come into play. And then Roxanne comes in to check on Wally, and she's like, I thought Automan would be here doing your job for you. And Wally's like, I can do it without a hologram, which is something Roxanne probably hears every Friday night. Woo! Actually, but no, there's actually no romance. Romance between the two of them here.
No. And then as he says, oh, I don't need Automan appears because he had called Automan.
Yes.
To help.
Because he wants a second opinion.
Yes.
Before Automan gets there, though, Cursor appears and appears to give Roxanne a unwanted kiss.
Oh, I guess I
So-
didn't notice that. I'm just so used to it.
Yeah. So Automan gets there. They're going to work together. Roxanne's leaving. And on her way out, what does Automan say to her?
Says, "See you later, gorgeous," or something. Oh my God. He was all charm, man. He was in it.
He had heard about a town called Abilene.
Yep.
Abilene. And so now he's talking to Wally about how he's been alive for 6 months and he hasn't had any love. But on Abilene, they fall in love every 20 minutes.
Yeah. He's never felt passion. And he goes all like.
I mean,
he goes
but he
all,
has, because he almost hooked up with France Nugent last episode or 2 episodes ago.
That wasn't real.
Maybe
that wasn't real.
For her.
Yeah.
Just good for her. But then Automan finds a credit card receipt for whatever the name of the singles bar is, and the initials are CD, and he's like, and 2000 is military time for 8 p.m. And it's just kind of like, so Wally couldn't find a fucking credit card receipt and figure out military time. Like, he's a really fucking smart guy,
Yeah.
LAPD, top of the class. And so Wally's going to go check out the club. And he says Automan has to stay home because a singles bar is too much for an inexperienced young hologram.
Oh, but I'm so glad he doesn't.
Because Automan then says to Cursor, if I've learned one thing from Abilene, it's don't take no for an answer.
Ooh.
Yes.
Well, it turns out he doesn't need to take no for an answer because he puts on a very snazzy outfit. And I'm thinking,
chic but unpretentious.
Chic but unpretentious, but also really 80s.
Sweater. With a jacket over it.
He's a thick boy, and he looks even more muscular than
it is. Chuck Wagner wears a suit well. He looks silly in this.
He does look silly.
I'm like, okay, this guy going to a singles bar ought to be like, fucking catnip on the whatever. And instead, he's wearing this like goofy outfit out of like, I don't know, it's something you'd expect a sitcom dad to wear a couple years later. Like it's they miss on the costume design at this point.
They do. But alas, he zips to the singles bar in the auto car.
Passing Wally,
who knows
that Automan has disobeyed him. And then, the singles bar, Automan is taken with the piano player. And he thinks he could do that and probably better, which we might find out he can. But Wally's not there to say, what do you think you could do it better, Automan? You're so full of yourself.
So
my mom says not everybody could play the piano. But then Automan meets some ladies. Do you want to talk about the ladies?
I desperately want to talk about the ladies. So these are 2 young ladies, one blonde, one brunette, of course, because that's how it works.
Variety is the spice of life.
And I'm surprised he didn't say that. And sits down because they are also taken with the piano player. So I have this written down. His opening line is, "Do you enjoy piano music?" Piano music. Piano music. At this point, he's playing a classical song, right? At this point, the piano player is playing a classical song. And the response from the blonde, I think, it doesn't matter because they're indistinguishable,
they don't have
really.
Names. What are you talking about?
It's my second favorite thing in the world. Now, this is the second time this line has been used.
Yes, it is. Can you see it with the stars?
Yep.
Yes, it is.
This is the second time that's been used, which just as an innuendo, but it leads you to ask what the first favorite thing is. It's probably fucking. And there's some exchange. The girls are sort of like fighting over Automan a little bit. Like, I saw him first. Baby. Please. And it's very odd and very weird. And it's at some point later, I think, after Wally comes in, because he does come in and notice Automan talking to these young ladies. But at some point, he has his arm around both of them and says, "Your place or mine." So again, we're going in deep, heavy into these pickup lines, these very cliched pickup lines. At least it's not 2022, Tinder profile pickup lines. Thank God. It's just these hacky, old-timey things, and it's not dick pics and
bragging about his NFTs.
Yeah, bragging about NFTs and stuff. So it's very funny to watch these women just fall all over him. But, they're attractive women in their own right. I don't think they would have a difficult time picking up a guy in a bar. So they're acting kind of desperate. Allegedly, but I just think that the one was trying to get the other one off his case.
Well, I think Chuck Wagner's a bit, if your usual, so the usual male clientele of this bar is married old men trying to get laid.
Fair enough.
So when they've got Chuck Wagner coming in, all 6'4" of him, blonde hair and blue eyes, I think I believed their enthusiasm.
Yes.
So, but pretty soon, someone else is going to show up, and she is going to take all of Otto's attention.
So in walks Rachel Innes, played by the beautiful, lovely, gorgeous Delta Burke. I almost said Delta Work, who's a drag queen. Delta Burke, who is just peak gorgeous. She has got these Elizabeth Taylor blue eyes. She is so beautiful. Whatever. She's not doing a Southern accent, which is weird for me because I'm used to her from that show about the Southern ladies and their decorating business, designing women. Thank you. And so it's kind of interesting. She's very meek. She's very mild. She's there to ask about her father. She knows that her father had been there the night before, and she's there to talk to anybody at the bar who knows him. And she approaches a bartender who says essentially that he's a regular, right? But he can't really give him any more information than that.
Is this when the bartender says that he knows Ed Scanlon?
I don't know. Maybe.
Because he knows Ed Scanlon, and that's how they get his name. That the dad is there hanging out with Ed Scanlon, who's a regular. And it was also of note because the bartender's like the first Black person on the show to have a line in a while.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, but yes, Automan meets her. And says,
Wally meets her first.
And
they go sit and to talk, but then he realizes that Automan is in over his head, which is I think where we get the your place or mine. And he literally jumps over tables and stuff to get to Automan to extract him from this situation. He's doing just fine by himself, Wally. Don't be a cock block. I said it. I can say it because I'm a girl. You can't say it because you're a boy. So extracts Automan from that situation and brings him over to Rachel Innes, who has walked away because the smoke is getting to her. There's no smoke in that bar. I did not see a single waft of smoke in that bar. Whatever. So Wally feasts his eyes on her. And what does he say? Something like, is there a chorus of angels singing?
Yes, Automan feasts his eyes.
Automan says that. Sorry. Yeah. Is there a chorus of angels singing? And then, sound effect, chorus of angels. They make eye contact. And he is hooked on some Delta.
Strange feelings for Automan.
Yeah.
So we get some more information about how Dad was supposed to check in with her after his meeting, and he never did because he got killed outside.
She is, by the way, particularly well maintained and emotionally with it, considering her father was just murdered the night before.
I'm fairly sure nobody showed trauma from a relation being murdered until the 90s.
Okay.
Because otherwise it would screw up your timeline for every show.
I guess. Well,
anyway, so this is also where when the scene's over, there's comedy music to go to the commercial break.
I guess I didn't notice.
It's like a wah, wah, wah type thing. And I'm just like, so it's just funny. We're supposed to think they're funny, but I guess. So, loan shark, gambler, bad guy. Ed Scanlon is a bad dude.
Yes.
But first, we have Lieutenant Jack going and talking to what's his face? Jarrett. And yeah. I was convinced, I was like, is he going to get kidnapped in this scene? When's he getting kidnapped? But there we meet Jarrett's wife, who later will make more of an impression. But I'm a little surprised she didn't have to have sex with Lieutenant Jack, given she's over 30.
Yeah.
But Jarrett lies to Lieutenant Jack and whatever. Like, moving on. Lieutenant Jack.
He is just an accessory in this.
Name. Yes, he doesn't have much to do.
Yeah.
But then we go to Automan watching more soaps, which pisses Wally off because Automan's watching soaps instead of doing his work.
Doing Wally's work for him.
What I liked about this in particular, for some onesies synchronicity, is Wally comes in and it's like, "What's going on, Automan?" And Automan's like, "Well,"
and he fills him in on this.
Started, banging his son's doctor, and he's like, "No, what's going on with your work? Why didn't you res up?"
It was so funny. That was a pretty good comic scene. Actually, the whole scene with him talking about liking Abilene.
Yes. And then they actually have a conversation about how Automan can't fall in love.
Yeah, which is sad.
And he's like talking about how, okay, well, here's some of the thing is, Wally doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about ever, right? Like, no idea what he's talking about. So like, he's like, "You can't fall in love, man. You're just a hologram. I didn't program you for that." And Automan's like, "But my systems are overloaded by Rachel's face."
Yeah.
And then they go to do something and Automan's like, "Well, I guess maybe I'm just reacting to interesting stimuli." And in
my mind, it's like, so he's a computer hologram, but what is the difference between his systems being overloaded with Rachel's face and a regular human reaction to being like in love with somebody? Like, it's all I think about. It's all I go to sleep and I see their face and, whatever. But again, that's like soap opera logic, right? So yeah, I mean, Wally's being a dick in this scene, but
not as big of a
but
dick
not as bad.
Usual.
Yeah,
right,
but not
like,
as bad as
this
normal.
Is like, we're not gonna,
and especially how it resolves itself at the end.
Yes. So now we get the bad guys having their scene together, which is a very interesting little bit of toxic masculinity and alpha stuff. I will note, of course, the whole alpha thing, in case you don't know, has been entirely discredited scientifically, and it's a bunch of bullshit for men's rights activists to get their guns and boners in a tizzy about. So is lizard brain, also not scientifically based bullshit. So there you go. That's another excuse for why sexually assaulting people isn't okay. It's just not okay, and you should know better.
Yeah.
Waka waka. Also hormones in your teens. Not actually enough to excuse that sort of behavior. Anyway, can you guess what day we're recording, folks? But yes, so Jarrett says, "I don't want to hear any more about your foolproof schemes and blood money." And then the bad guy says, "I don't want to hear you talk like that, Jarrett." And Jarrett gets all sheepish and says, "Okay."
So stupid.
And it's like, it's this really weird, like, you don't really see this anymore because you don't have the same amount of hacky white male character actors. Like, everybody's somebody at this, like, in modernity, this sort of scene, you don't have it with like guys in their 50s berating each other and like doing dominance things. It's really weird. And it's like, gives a middle manager somewhere a chub. So they're going to throw a party.
Yes. To celebrate the sale of the company, they're going to throw a party. And they use it also as an excuse to invite Rachel because they need her to sign the company over. Because presumably when her father died, he passed the company on to her. That's how fast estates get resolved. It is. I've been there. In LA. So then they're like, "But what about that young cop, Wally?" And Ed Scanlon says, "Don't worry, I'll make sure he doesn't show up." Okay, so that's my never mind. We can go on.
No, go.
No, I was just going to talk about the Wally getting beat up scene. I don't know if that's next.
That's what's next. It's his car chase. It's his shitty car chase.
Yeah.
And then getting beat up.
And that was the best scene for me, even though he's not being a jerk this episode. He has been such a jerk that I told you earlier, I'm not even joking. I wrote, beat him up, kick his ass. I was like, beat him up, kick his ass. Bah, 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 bah. I was doing whole hockey cheers and stuff. It was great.
So when Otto passed Wally earlier, we saw Wally in a line of 3 cars.
Mm-hmm.
We see the same setup in this. And it's basically how they pretend there's traffic.
Yeah.
And I was like, so the bad guys have him boxed in? Nope. That's just how they're pretending there's traffic. The bad guys come from a intersection. And there's a car chase through a really residential looking part of the studio backlot. And then Wally actually is able to fend for himself a little bit before he runs and tries to get over one of those really tall fences. Those really tall fences that are the bane of the network chase scene, whatever. But when the guy beats the shit out of him, he says, "That's just a taste," which I'm sure you got excited about because it promised there'd be more ass kicking, and there's not. But also, stay away from my girl, Rachel. So Ed Scanlon's idea was to convince Wally that her ex-boyfriend was beating him up or something.
Yeah.
It
was weird.
Simultaneously more thoughtful than you'd expect, but also
it's kind of out of nowhere. Later
it goes nowhere.
Later, they don't recognize Wally when he comes into the party. It's really weird.
Yeah. So, but then we get to the party.
No. First, we get to another shot of Wally's apartment because Rachel comes to visit Wally.
That's right.
And Automan is there, and he's taken aback. He is at a loss for words. All of the things that you do when you are breathlessly and hopelessly in love with somebody. Not me, but and she introduces this notion that there's a party. And I don't know why I have to go, but I'm going to go. And Automan's like, I'm going to come with you and tell them you're bringing a guest, Mr. Trospers, which is a weird name.
I didn't even try writing it down. I was just like, no.
Never even heard of that name before.
Dumb, not real name.
And then you don't see it, but they go to the party and he's manifested himself a fucking Western bow tie and a fucking ugly suit.
But however they get there does not appear to be in the auto car because when she sees it later, it's for the first time.
Yeah.
So that makes no sense.
Yeah.
They took a fucking cab.
And then the auto car just appeared or his Ferrari just appeared.
I mean, there is one part where he says that he's actually Wally actually works for him.
Yeah.
So she can tell him all of his problems.
Yeah.
And then the last thing was, I'm doing this because it's my job. And I was like, yeah, it's his job to love you, Delta Burke. That's what his job is. But yes. So he goes there in his silly Southern gentleman tie. It is absurd.
It looks so dumb.
They have not. He is going to do a Texan Dallas, like Bobby Ewing. No, not even, because he didn't do an accent, right? He's going to do like a fucking bad Southern accent, Texas accent, and pretend to be an oil baron. We don't know that yet. So there's no reason. This tie is just out of nowhere.
Yeah. And the accent he does is only about 10% a Texas accent too. It's it's bad, but it's also barely there. Ugh. And so we see him at the party and what is he doing? The first thing we see, playing the piano.
Yes.
Playing some piano music, as it were.
And then Rachel's dancing.
So he starts out playing some classical song.
Yes.
And, people are taken with him. There's somebody sitting at the piano bench with him and Rachel is looking at him lovingly. And then he's like, oh, how about this for a change of pace? And he plays some sound alike to Great Balls of Fire, which we heard in the nightclub. They were playing.
And that's how he knows he can do it. Yeah.
And so he plays some sound alike very aggressively. And there's a bunch of like white people dancing in the background. And they're just like essentially sidestepping and clapping their hands roughly to the beat of the song. I have dancing white people written down, but there's not much to talk about, except it goes on way too long.
Way too long.
Filler.
And it almost seems to establish that Rachel's at this party having a good time getting drunk.
Yeah.
And I'm like, but you're there
investigating your father's death.
It's suspicious. Like you shouldn't be getting wasted. Like what the fuck's going on, man? But then we introduce Automan's cover. His name's Billy, and he's a Texan. And so he's there with the buyer of the company, who is this old guy, and he's got his wife there. And then it's Jarrett and Jarrett's wife. Now, Jarrett's wife is going to get progressively more and more obviously horny for Automan as this scene progresses, while her husband watches.
Yeah.
So you're just like, oh, you're like Franklin Graham. You've got a fucking chair in the corner. I got you.
He's a cuck. Yeah.
Yeah. No. Okay. At least she's not fucking Lieutenant Jack, right?
Yeah.
Like, in the background is a cover of Sweet Dreams Are Made of This, which I didn't realize would have been covered in 1983 for use in Automan. I was just like, holy shit, that's the Eurythmics. Like, what the fuck is going on?
It was a good cover too.
Yeah.
It took me a minute to be like, no, that's not really her. Okay. And there's this progressive conversation. Automan does this thing, and he's done it in a couple episodes where he's trying to flaunt his wealth, and he gets progressively more absurd about it. It's just, I mean, we always talk about how the show is for 8-year-olds, but it is like what an 8-year-old would say. Like, if I was rich, this is how I would tell people I was rich.
But there's also this added like awareness of soap operas.
Mm-hmm.
Because he's like, how am I going to impress these people? Well, then Automan's just like, well, I killed the fucking judge who got in my way. What's up? And everybody's horrified.
Everybody's horrified. He turns into this, he turns from this, just like a soap opera, like split second turns from this charming, talented person to a monster. But the way he reads that old lady, essentially calling her a slut, like, oh, that's not what those linebackers said. Oh my God, I was laughing so hard. That's literally, besides the covers of the song, the last thing I have written here, because I enjoyed it so much. Him just like reading this woman, and she's mortified, and they leave. Like, it is hilarious. It's great. It's great stuff. But before they leave, he offers to buy the company. He keeps like, I'll give you 10% more. I'll give you 20% more. I'll give you 50% more. To the point where the bad guys have to go, No,
we're skipping some. Are we skipping
Wally
something?
comes in. Wally comes in and is introduced as Automan's accountant, which is really funny. But at this point, the bad guys don't recognize him, even though he's got they make a real funny vaudeville joke. He walks in with a Band-Aid on his cheek, and because he got his ass kicked and all he needed was a Band-Aid. And what does the guy say? Like, have an accident? And he's like, no thanks, I already had one. It was so stupid. It was so great. I loved that. But they don't recognize that he's Wally Nebeker, that he's the cop that they sent somebody out to beat up. Like, they don't. I found that odd. Like, how did the guy know who to look for?
Okay, my notes either are out of order, or which doesn't make any sense, or somehow they introduce the idea that they're going to go to. Oh no! Okay, so that's what it is. While Automan is schmoozing before he says the linebacker shit, the Jarrett probably, yes, because Ed Scanlon's hiding in another room, which is how you party.
Sounds like a party to me.
Jarrett is talking to Delta Burke about the computer disk. And he's like, did he mail it to you? It'd be really helpful if you had that. And she's like, I don't know what you're talking about.
She's like, why would he mail it to me if he could just...
That's weird. He could have just handed it to me.
Yeah.
When I met him, that night after he got done at the bar, right? So, but that's going to be important later. There was something about I love your car. Yes, there is. Jarrett's wife says, I love your car. Does the rest of you glow? Automan starts to say, as a matter of fact, yes.
It's not the car. It's the collar.
Oh.
Because remember, he's been glowing underneath his when he changes into real clothes.
Oh.
He's been glowing. So she says, I love your collar. Does the rest of you glow like that? Yeah, no, she's laying it on real heavy.
Okay.
I would have loved it if she would have grabbed him by the collar. Just take it.
It's pretty close. It's pretty close. So then Automan insults the lady, humiliates Wally, but then Delta Burke knows where to go.
Yeah.
They're going to go to Dad's beach house at Point Doom.
Which is a real place. It's
real place?
Dume.
Cool.
In Malibu.
Okay. But before that, Ed Scanlon, bad guys have a scene where they checked out Automan's cover using a computer and discovered he's worth $500 million. So they're going to take that cowboy for all he's worth.
Yeah.
Then Lieutenant Jack shows up, not to get kidnapped, to say, hey, fucker, another one of your helicopters went down and we know it's you, man.
Yeah.
And Jared's just like, I didn't know it was me. What? So whatever. And then Lieutenant Jack leaves. Now, Lieutenant Jack is going to spend the rest of the episode apparently cruising around in a patrol car, which there's this episode of Frasier where it's Frasier and his new boss, and the boss misunderstands and thinks Frasier's gay and coming on to him. And they talk about how Frasier's dad is also gay because of this misunderstanding thing. And Frasier's dad has a line about how, like, he likes hanging out at this bar because there are a lot of young cops. And all I can think when we find out later that Lieutenant Jack just spends his nights driving around in the patrol cars, I'm like, oh, he's just hanging out with a lot of young cops. Like, what's up?
He's hanging out in Vaseline Alley with a lot of young cops.
Okay. Make me a car, Cursor.
Oh, yes. And so they formulate a plan to leave, Automan and Rachel. And before they get outside, Cursor makes the auto car appear, and Delta, Miss Rachel, is taken by the car. Boy, do you have
style.
Boy, do you have good taste. Yes.
Okay, so then we get a driving scene, right? Yes. Mm-hmm. So
and the bad guys start following. Oh no, that's later.
Well, the bad guys start following them, but then they get away. But then it turns out that the bad guys know where they're going anyway. And it hadn't occurred to them to go to the beach house ever. But during this sequence, there's an Automan theme cover with a lot of horn and drums. Mm-hmm. Because I'm just so sad that there isn't an Automan soundtrack. Okay. So the bad guys are going to go to the beach house and bring along the papers for Rachel to sign.
Yeah.
Wally is also headed to the beach house.
Because they left a note for him.
They left him a note. Now, we get to the beach house, and Rachel and Automan, roaring fireplace, ready to go. But wait.
But first, they get there and they go through the mail and they find the disc.
Oh, yeah. Dad mailed the disc to himself, not to his daughter. Yeah. Okay, dude. Why would, what? One of them puts your daughter in danger. The other one's just stupid. Have a better idea.
Yeah.
Okay. So
they find the disc. They find the information. They know what's going on.
Yeah.
They then are sitting at the roaring fireplace, staring into each other's eyes, doing that business, not drinking, which I thought was weird.
Would you want to be drunk for a little Chuck Wagner, or would you want to remember every moment? Okay, so the problem is they just got to the scene that's cut by the commercial, and Automan doesn't know what to do next. So instead, he kind of soft dumps her.
I thought you were starting to have feelings for me.
And he says, we're just from two different worlds.
It's not.
And I was like, is he going to tell her? Because one of my things is when you're an imaginary person, hologram who fights crime, you should at least get to tell these ladies who fall in love with you what's really up, instead of them just thinking you're just some random dude in their life for an episode.
For 2 days. Yeah. She takes it pretty well, though.
She does take it pretty well.
Again, they've only known each other for 2 days. Let's not get overworked here. He's not being a bastard.
No. And he's worried he's going to disappoint her with his glow stick, as it were. But then Wally shows up, and I thought Wally was going to like flip his shit. And instead he's like pretty chill about it. Like, as opposed to, the way he's acted before about Automan expressing himself in the real world. But Wally's just there for a second before the bad guys show up. And
they recognize them as cops. And
they're cops. They got gunpoint. They take care of one of them by throwing. There's a fight scene. It's not good. And then
I don't even remember. I just watched this yesterday. I don't even remember.
They throw Jared. Automan throws Jared out the window because there's slow-mo for it. But then Scanlan's got his gun. He shoots at Automan, and the bullets go through Automan, presumably. But then they basically just let him grab Delta Burke and hold her at gunpoint.
Oh, yes. And she gets kidnapped. Yeah, she gets kidnapped.
Now,
this is when there's another really bad car chase.
Right. But why couldn't Automan have dematerialized and rematerialized in front of them?
I don't know.
Because they needed to have a fucking car chase. So
Delta is tucked on the floor of the passenger seat of the car that's going 90 miles an hour on the Pacific Coast. No, it's not on the Pacific Coast Highway. They're in some neighborhood. Because they end up on a road that has a wall in front of it, whatever. And I just thought it was, I don't even remember anything about the car chase, except that she was so motionless considering they're driving down a street at 90 miles an hour.
Yep, very much. And he the guy looks at her awkwardly.
Yeah.
It's only vaguely holding the gun on her. Auto car turns into auto chopper for a little bit so they can get ahead of them. And then the way the car chase resolves is Cursor draws a brick wall in the middle of the road.
And they're still in the chopper at this point, right?
Yes. But then they turn it back.
How does he do that?
Because Cursor can do two things at once, because the power grid is not in this episode.
Oh, okay.
Scanlan swerves to avoid the brick wall. And it's like, why the fuck is there a brick wall in the middle of the road? This makes no sense. I'm on an episode of Automan. They roll up, get her out of the car. Scanlan's got the gun, but he's apparently in shock because Wally just takes the gun from him and turns it on him. And Wally calls the cops on the radio from the chopper.
Yes.
And he's like, chopper to headquarters. Why would they think Wally had his own chopper?
Yeah.
Again, show makes more sense is if Wally really is Desi Arnez Jr. and he always wanted to be a cop, and so mom buys him these things and he gets to pretend to be a cop.
And it would make more sense if the captain, the lieutenant knew about Automan and all of his magical powers, and they were just like, oh, Automan got his auto chopper and now they're in the auto chopper. It would make so much more sense if he would just come clean. There's literally no reason for him to not come clean.
None. So this is where my note, Lieutenant Jack out cruising with the uniforms. Okay. So then it's Rachel and Otto having their farewell kiss.
Aww.
Rachel says when she saw Automan get shot, something inside of her almost died or something. And she'll never forget him. And they have a lackluster kiss.
Yeah. Except it's really sweet with Wally watching on. It's like he's about to say something and then he's just sort of enjoying the moment, seeing his son have his first kiss. It's very not first kiss, but
Yeah. The first one that isn't with the slut of the episode. The 30 plus villainous slut of the episode.
Yeah.
Lieutenant Jack's sloppy seconds. Which I acknowledge is obviously a very sexist term and concept. So anyway, and also no kink shaming.
Tag.
Lots of caveats to that joke, folks. Sorry about that. But you really need to see what Lieutenant Jack looks like. Okay, just saying. Like, pity the poor women who had to pretend to think this guy was hot.
Sorry.
But then we get the after episode thing, and it's Wally's apartment, and it's got an exterior now.
Mm-hmm.
So we actually have an exterior apartment shot. I wonder if that'll continue. And there's knocking at the front door. And well, first there was knocking, and I was like, is Automan knocking on Wally's bedroom door? Because he thinks Wally's tricking. But no, it's at his front door.
Yeah.
So Wally goes out to the front door, and it is Roxanne. And I was like, oh, so they are together. No, she's there with the captain and Lieutenant Jack, and they solved the crime.
And are celebrating with a bottle of champagne.
Yes, in Wally's apartment. And they present it like it is an average thing.
Yes, like this is what we do.
This is just partying at Wally's after a case. We're just pals. So, drunk captain is like, this is how we solve cases, blah, blah, blah. But I bet Wally's over here at 10:30 at night working on his computer. And Wally's like, actually, I am. And he's like, oh, what are you doing there on your computer, Wally? And Wally is trying to figure out how many points you get for having an affair with your plastic surgeon because he's working on his video game. And everybody...
That was pretty funny. Yeah.
That was pretty funny. Did you also notice that Wally had some chesties for that scene?
I didn't notice Wally's
Not
chesties.
as bad as last episode, but he still like had they got the chesties for him.
I did not notice that. I apologize.
Yeah, well, just lucky Lucy's not alive to hear this, and then you don't think her son's attractive. Lucy's fucking poor assistant, making sure nobody disparages Desi Arnez Jr. on podcasts forever. There's a slightly interesting thing where the way they laugh at the captain not getting the joke, it's like Roxanne gets the joke, which is weird because it's like
nobody knows about this video game.
Right. This is really niche, right?
Yeah.
But also Lieutenant Jack's like, oh, that silly guy, that's my silly captain doesn't get the joke. And it's like, you're either the same age or older, dude. Like, what are you talking about? Like, what?
Very weird. And again, there's this nod to like, oh, I didn't do it alone. And it's like, again, there's no reason. The only reason to not give up the fact that you have this hologram is to keep the show going. Yeah. It's the only reason.
Well, I mean, let's think about this. Automan, much like RoboCop, serves the public trust, protect the innocent, uphold the law.
Did you just read my mind? Because I was just like in my head going, RoboCop and Automan need to have a crossover movie.
Well, the problem is that that doesn't work for fucking law enforcement. Like, protect the innocent, uphold the law, protect the public trust.
But if you could just make a bunch of holograms of Automan, then that could be your police force, and they do good things, and you program them to do good things.
That's not what the police force is for.
Yeah, but
so it wouldn't work.
We can change it. We can change it.
Only on Disney Plus. So cross your fingers that they buy the Automan license, and then buy whoever owns RoboCop right now. I mean, it was. I'm hesitant to call it a cute episode, but it had some bad moments. The villains sucked. The car chase was terrible and ended with cartoon music. But there is a cute quality to Automan's interactions.
So because of all sorts of things, I don't think I've expressed enough how much I loved this episode for a variety of reasons. One, it's following through with this, Automan watches something and then turns into a character from that thing, which I love. I think that's great. I think it's stupid, but I think it's fucking hilarious that they went with it. Two, I love the love story. I love all the cheesy pickup lines because they're innocent and it's not like, here's a picture of my dick. And Wally is actually recognizing Automan as an autonomous being who programming can learn to maybe have a reasonable facsimile of emotions. How about that? To tie in the title. So I am enjoying that aspect of it. And I loved the romance part of it. Delta Burke was fantastic. Totally different than what I expect from her, because I expect her to be more va-va-voom, and she was just sweet and innocent, and she really just wanted to know what was going on, why her dad got killed. And she fell in love with Automan. It was so cute. Wally needs to make a partner for Automan.
That worked out in Bride of Frankenstein.
Yeah. Well,
that would be awesome though. Same ending. She's just like, no, you can't program me to fucking fall in love with this guy. What? Burn it down.
Oh, but it's Chuck Wagner. Yeah.
Well, he'd have to. Well, I guess I don't know. I guess Chuck Wagner's more attractive than Boris Karloff. Whatever floats your boat.
Yeah.
Whatever floats your boat.
But he could even make it look like Delta Burke.
You didn't watch Star Trek: The Next Generation, did you?
I know. I'm not a nerd.
There is a recurring subplot about LeVar Burton falling in love with the hologram of a scientist and then basically stalking her when he meets the real version.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Ooh, yeah.
Yikes it is. So I don't know if I would trust Automan to handle it, but okay, so that's Automan for this week. What's next week?
Next week's episode 6, I just had it up, is called Flashes and Ashes. Walter's friend Frank is killed by fellow cops who steal from an armory. However, they make it look like it was a thief, so Walter does his own investigation to prove otherwise.
Okay, so first of all, little surprised at dirty cops. Cool.
Mm-hmm.
Second of all, that's sort of the plot of Lethal Weapon 3. Third of all, Wally's got friends. Don't believe it.
I don't know any of these people who are.
Is this the Ed Lauder episode?
I don't know who that is.
Well, you'd see his name if it were there. Okay, so that'll be next time.
Okay. Yeah. Let's
smoke them if you got them, folks.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much. Bye.